Welcome to The Memory Game, a podcast where I, Nathan Tuffin,
and I, Rob Beer, exchange voice notes as we carry out the important work of recording an emotional history of video games
for the betterment of future generations.
This week, we look back across Series 2.
So last time, Nath, I think what we did was we tried chatting for a little bit, and it created a naturalistic fade in for the
Not
thing.
this
and then
time.
We just announced that we had started, just like right now. That was the start. We started.
Here we are.
We're starting.
Okay.
So welcome to the season 2 recap. We're going to try and stick to the same format that we did last time of addressing the things that we got completely wrong in Rob and Nath Know Nothing, doing a quick tour of the trash treasure truck, and then finishing up on some listener contributions and finding out what you guys have been sharing with us. Before we do any of that, I thought one thing that we could do this time that we didn't do last time was just a quick recap of the questions that we answered across the series.
So first was, what are the newest games you feel nostalgia for? That was a listener question from Joe after he played Forza 4.
We then considered the landscapes that we think about most in games.
Then we looked at the music from games that have stuck with us.
We then spent an episode thinking about the options that we always pick in games.
I then pitched a question about the pub quiz questions you might be able to answer because of knowledge you've learned in games.
And then we spent the last episode of the series thinking about the games that we never got to play.
Lovely.
And whilst doing that, we managed to get a bunch of stuff wrong. Which brings us to the first proper format point of the episode. Rob and Nath Know Nothing.
Rob and Nath Know Nothing.
Idiot. Yes.
I did a big postscript about Shitlist being a website, but that was an email copy pasta that had been sent around.
I did love that story, though, and how much it made you cringe having to recall it.
Yeah.
I got a load of stuff wrong about the world of Death Stranding. So the monsters that I vaguely mentioned, they're called beached things. They're referred to as BTs in the game. They come from a land known as the Beach, which is supposed to be like this unique thing each person has. You visit it in near-death experiences. So the beach things are like a link to the afterlife. They bring with them a rain called a time fall, which I didn't remember the name of, that decays whatever it touches. And that little baby fetus thing that you wear around is called a bridge baby. They represent the stage between life and death.
I mean, that all seems pretty obvious stuff, Nath.
I feel really stupid for forgetting all of that.
For some reason, I called the game Rift when referring to it not working on my PC.
Just floating along on my Rift.
Yeah. Quick, let's build a Rift.
In Kingpin Life of Crime, I said there were dialogue buttons for positive, negative, and neutral interactions, but actually it was just pressing Y to greet someone or ask what's going on, and X to insult them, which is usually just swearing at them to get their attention. And if you swore at them too much, they would fight you. I
mentioned the song Hamster Dance that it got to number 1, but Hamster Dance by Hampton and the Hamsters peaked at number 4 on the UK Christmas 1999 UK singles chart.
Robbed, though. They were robbed.
Yeah.
In GTA 4, I talked about always choosing the revenge final mission. This is on the episode in Choices, because the other choice always results in your cousin Roman's death. And I sort of quite reductively said Roman dies instead of the sister of one of your colleagues. But actually, that character is Kate McCreary. And she's you date her and spend time with her in the game, or you can choose to. And she kind of represents Nico's chance at a normal life. So that was a bit mean, maybe. However, if you do choose the option where she lives, she does eventually leave Liberty City and you can't date her anymore. So no Kate, no cousin. So always go for revenge is the message there.
Strong ethics. I pointed out when talking about Banjo-Kazooie, I said that you collect honeycombs as the sort of objectives, but that's your health. It's puzzle pieces that you need. Once you get enough puzzle pieces, you complete the picture, you can open a new level. There you go.
Beautiful.
Think about it.
I wrongly described old PC games as coming in big chunky square boxes, but they were more sort of long and rectangular and then contained another box. This was just a bridging one, so I had one extra that matched the number of Rob and Nath Know Nothings that you have.
Oh, come on. Think about your quadrilaterals, you goon. Yeah. In Metal Gear Solid, I talked about surviving the torture scene and my friend Callum helping me do that. It turns out that if you complete it properly by surviving and not submitting, then you get the Meryl ending where she stays alive. But you can actually complete the game just by giving up, like giving Ocelot information, which means that Meryl then dies, and you get what's called the Otacon ending. And what that means is at the end of the game, the people who get the Meryl ending get the infinite ammo bandana. So when you replay it, you have infinite ammo. But if you get the Otacon ending, you get the stealth camo, which means that you can do the sort of go invisible trick. And there's no section in that game that requires you to restart your console. I think I was thinking of the Psycho Mantis boss, who breaks the fourth wall by reading your memory card. And he's the one where you have to switch the controller ports to beat him. Also, when you beat him, it says, a strong man doesn't need to read the future. He writes his own.
Oh, Psycho Mantis.
Yeah.
That's as I was listening to that your message in that episode, I preemptively thought your friend was going to show you how to move the pad from one to the other, because I also got that mixed up. That's one of the only ones I remember being like a secret trick in Metal Gear Solid and how you fix it.
And weirdly, whilst trying to look up the answer to it, I was trying to watch some Let's Plays, and because everyone's playing it through emulators or remastered versions, they've had to change how that works, because people are playing it on PC, and they just had to change how that boss works, and it's way easier. I think you just have to blow up some statues or something now. It's like, yeah.
But the beauty of it was switching the pad over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can make it work so that you can tell your PC to have pretend memories on a fake memory card, but you have to like preempt it. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, it's the opposite. Yeah,
that's why all the kids are hackers now, isn't it? Even if they want to play Metal Gear Solid, they've got to learn to code in a fake pad into an emulator.
Yeah,
the kids are hackers.
All the kids are hackers. And that's why I live in an underground bunker. Yeah.
Okay.
That's our first official merchandise is all the kids are hackers t-shirts.
Kids are hackers. That's not even been my experience. Young people don't even know how to use computers anymore.
They're useless. They don't file saving. If you talk to someone about where they'd save something, they'd be like, what do you mean? Like, it's just yeah.
It just saves into the memory on your iPad, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Come on, think about it. I guess that moves us nicely on to the trash treasure truck, which is our format for looking back at our answers. So just a reminder for what we're talking about there. It was the idea of what would you trash, what would you destroy the memory of if you could? Which memory would you preserve beyond all others? Would you treasure? And which one did you forget to mention? Which game did you forget to mention that you're trying to tuck in at the last moment? But we realized, but it sounds better if it's a truck rather than tuck. So the visual there is a big truck reversing through.
And you did a really lovely sound bit for it as well, didn't you? Of the truck
that'll
reversing.
be coming back.
I very much enjoyed that.
Trash, treasure, truck.
What are you thinking? Would you like to start us off with your trash, buddy?
I forgot to check who got to go first last time, but let's do it. I'll go first.
I think it was me, so this makes sense. It is you.
You mean you, meaning me. Yeah, that's a Simpsons reference. Let's not get into it. So the first thing that I would trash, given the opportunity, is the little 20-minute go I had on Majora's Mask, which I confessed to at the end of our episode about the games that you never got to play.
You want to trash your memory of being a liar to our listeners. That's what's happening here.
Yeah, both because of that, and also because it's tainted the experience. Like, it's there's a saying that my friend loves, which is like, not to try is not to know, but sometimes that's nice. Apparently,
especially if ignorance really is bliss.
Yeah, especially if it turns out that the sort of gammy controls undermine your experience of a thing that otherwise was electricity in your mind. So
I think that's something we're at massive risk of with all of this. I'm finding when we're talking about a lot of these old games, I think, I wouldn't mind going back to play that. But that is, that's a silly path to walk a lot of the time, isn't it? Very rarely does it match up to your memories, good or bad.
Yeah, but I think there is also maybe wisdom to not letting these things sit on pedestals. There's a real danger, and I felt that as we started off on this sort of project, was like, are we gonna? Do you know those TV programs that are like I Love 1985, and it's just people being like, "Do you remember BMXs? Um, things were great when I was a kid. We need
Remember
to go
Sonic?
back. We need to go back."
Remember up, down, left, right, A start. Remember Sonic?
And so, yeah, I think that's something we've been, because we're like wet blankets and introspective goons. I think we've been able to access different layers of memories rather than just making it an element of like everything was better when my bones didn't ache.
There's a little bit of that.
Oh,
there's a little bit of, it was nice when we could play games and our families didn't get in the way.
Yeah, stupid families.
But, that kind of just banging on about briefly saying how great everything was, that doesn't fit with our need to hear our own voices for big, long stretches of time.
No,
and really talk about how we feel about things.
We're the ones that matter, not the games. I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So what? How about yourself? What did you want to try and trash?
So I thought, it's funny because I just talked about it at length, but I want to trash Death Stranding. But I feel like this is almost a positive trash, this one, because I'm trashing it because it was a great game. It was one I mentioned in my answer to Joe's question about the newest games we feel nostalgic for. And I also gave it an honorable mention in Landscapes because have you played it, buddy? It's really beautiful.
No, I've seen it. And yeah, I think maybe I have the same fear of what you're going to say here, which is that like, I would maybe get a couple of hours in, think this is brilliant, and then be left with this gaping wound of unresolved tension and drama because I didn't finish the game and know that the problem wasn't with the game, that it was with me and my
100%. You've nailed it. The only thing is the reason I didn't play it probably wouldn't be the same for you is because I got scared by it. Because I got scared by it. That's not because it creeped me out a little bit. I just got scared by it because it was too jumpy and creepy for me, which is not even. I know that you could play it given the other games you've played, and it wouldn't freak you out. You might be a bit, creeped out, but probably in a way that you would enjoy. But I just couldn't get through it, and a part of me hates myself for that because it just means that I don't care about the being scared stuff. It just means I'm missing out on this really cool story I never got to understand or and also I'm super intrigued about it. It's in there still. It's like, what happens? Why? What is all this about? Why is it? It's like Lost. How no one watched the final season because it just got terrible. It's that, isn't it? It's like, well, I'll never know now. But it also reminds me of the other games I've done that with. So I did that with The Last of Us, which like everyone loves, seminal game.
Nath.
I know, but
it works towards an ending as well.
Yeah.
Like that's a game that's about endings. Yeah.
And again, there was no point where I wasn't like, I loved it. I thought this is amazing.
And you can't watch the TV series because it's going to ruin the end of the game.
Absolutely.
But you're never going to play the end of the game. So what's the point of preserving it?
But the other thing is, I'm holding out for a time when I might. So I'm in stasis with all of it.
Yeah.
My only hope is if a friend does a Let's Play. That's all I can do. If you started doing Let's Plays or as bonus tier content, I could watch it over your shoulder. I'm all right with that. Do you know what I mean? I can manage that because it's not directly me. My friend Jack has done some Let's Plays. He played through The Forest, which is terrifying. But I could watch the YouTube videos of him playing it, especially because he's talking the whole way through. It's like comforting because he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go over here," and it's fun. Yeah. But I could never have played through it, So if you could maybe play through Death Stranding, that's my only hope.
It's it's a future Patreon tier, isn't it?
Definitely, 100%.
The Nathan's Tears, which is we do Let's Plays where we watch Nath break down and to see what the visceral reality of his cowardly custard.
That's what the real thing would be, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be the fans wanting me to watch you. It would be the fans wanting to see how I reacted to playing it on my own. Yeah. But I do wonder if even having an audience that I could speak to might take the edge off it, might make me be a bit like, it's all right. I could vocalize my terror instead of being sat in here on my own.
I was going to say, let's change gears and move on to the treasure section, hopefully involving less tears and fears. My game for this, I think what I've settled on, because obviously there's so much to treasure in all of these games. Particularly, we talked about landscapes and talked about music, which are two elements of games that have strong positive emotional connections.
Yeah.
But the one I actually stuck to, I don't think was from either of those. It was Guns of Icarus, which is the game that we spoke about, where you fly ships, and that we had a brief window where we were able to play it because there was a bit of a community playing it. But I think those rare moments where it all came together, where you had a full crew on a ship and you were able to execute something that was vaguely like what you were supposed to be doing. That was just such a rush, and is so difficult to replicate because it relied upon all of those things being in a line, like, you know, stars aligning. So I think you've got to treasure those
Yeah,
moments.
100%. That links really nicely to mine, and it makes me think of one of my favorite answers of yours from this whole season. Is in the nostalgia episode where you mentioned online games that kind of no longer exist just because the communities have died or there's no support for it or anything like that. And that's like perfect for a podcast like this, I think, because it's like it was so great, but you can't, you know, all that stuff I was just saying about not being able to recapture, you can't even go back and play it. You know, there's no point. There's not going to be anyone on there. So yeah, I thought that was really well thought of. But it leads
So
me
is
to
your game going to be the Coke game? Is that?
yeah, which unfortunately I've spent 7 hours a day on since, just mixing those tracks over and over again and making hundreds of accounts so I can get Coke sofas and lamps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, I've got an excellent podcast exclusive though, of a nice thing that happened because of the podcast.
Oh yeah.
That I've waited to not tell you about, even though I saw you on the weekend. So my treasure is Infantry Online, which we talked about when we were talking about options in games. I talked about how I always play the heavy class. And that was one of the games I was always the heavy guy in. And I had that gun that fires off this big green
What
bullet.
do you call it? The big green bullet?
Yeah, the BGB, the big green bullet.
Yeah.
And it was just a stupid thing. And my friends in school, they'd always joke about me, you know, using the big green bullet, and how it was just like, other than just being a classic thing for me to do, it was just like cheesy, you know, not, how do you call it in game? You know, where I was just spamming I wasn't being skillful. I just had this big juicy thing and I was firing it into the thing. But I wanted to find a picture of it, right? So I could put it up on the Instagram, maybe even a video of it. So I went looking. But this is bear in mind, I started playing this game when I was 13. And then it was on and off servers for a few years. And then the servers went down forever in like 2014 or something. So 10 years ago. So I was searching and then found a screenshot, followed the link. And it took me to a Steam page where I found that
there's like a crowdfunded.
Well, I don't know how it's happened, because there has been dozens of projects that I've kept my eye on over the years. But Infantry Online Free, which is an exact remake of it as it was in 2014, is now free on Steam. So I found that, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
Why are we talking? Why are we doing this? Why are we playing that
right now?
Yeah.
Well, it's bittersweet, I will say, because there is a little dedicated community, but they're based in America. They only play at like 7 p.m. Eastern Standard or something, which is like the middle of the night for us. So
yeah, I
might be awake, but not in a situation where I can be playing infantry. But I logged on. I went onto the map I mentioned called
the Big Green Bullet.
I remade my character. I remembered the layout, and there are hundreds of weapons you can choose, but I remember what it was called. Remade the guy, and I did a little video of me shooting the big green bullet, which I'll put in the show notes for that episode. And honestly, there was no other players on. That's the sad thing. So there was just me on all these servers. But it was nice nostalgic, because it was so visceral, so like, oh my god, this is exactly how I remember it. This is brilliant. The little sounds, the music. There's this little guy at the beginning that goes, okay, chums, it's time to go to war, or something like that, which Justin had as his message tone for a while, like in the mid 2010s. And it was brilliant. So I did that, and then later that night I did log on, and there was like 3 people playing on a map called Bug Hunt, which I used to really love, and it's got AI bots playing as the bugs that chase you around. So I did have a little game with some people. But so that was lovely, a treasured memory that I got to remember, and then I kind of got to recreate a little bit as well.
Oh, glorious! Yeah. This isn't me. This could have been my tuck now, but I'm just gonna say it because I was thinking of it. There is a browser version of Command and Conquer Red Alert 2, isn't there? That we played a little bit of, and I think it's one of those things that got a bit of an uptick because of COVID. Meant more people looking back and finding things. And the thing that I found with that was, as you say, like the experience of just going to the menu screen, the music from the menu screen, the sounds as you like hover over each of the menu buttons. It's got this like mechanical sliding sound, and you just instantly know how to navigate through all of like the options, even though you haven't done it for 20 years or something.
Yeah,
it's deep in the recess of your of your brain as these like menu navigation structure for a.
It is satisfying as well, even if the actual act of playing it isn't. Which that I remember quite enjoying playing that as well. But
Yeah,
the all of that stuff, like those boxes reticking in your brain, definitely some serotonin or something there.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, and so that wasn't my tuck, but we should move on to what we're going to truck into the series as a last minute answer to a question that we didn't think of at the time. And this one I did think of, and I avoided including my answers because I've got other reasons to reference this game in the future, and I didn't want to turn it into Grand Theft Auto where it gets has to have its own jingle because it gets mentioned so frequently. And that is the Witness, which is an obvious answer for the landscapes question, and which I know that that Jack messaged in. One of our listeners messaged in saying like, how has this not been mentioned in the landscapes episode? And I guess one of the reasons I didn't include it is because the landscape there isn't purely for aesthetic purposes. The whole message or structure to that game is that the environment is integrated into the puzzles, right? And that part of what it's trying to get you to do is see this infinite wonder and complexity of the world and how that's stitched into the fabric and the making of the world. And then that's what it's trying to do in the game. And then it's trying to encourage you to think of the rest of the world like that, that once you start, it's hard to look at a tree the same once you've played that game because you're looking for the puzzle answer that's hidden in the branching network. So that's why I didn't include it. But obviously, the not just the spaces and the visuals of the landscape, but the color palette selection, the shading of it is absolutely stunning. So
that's crafted. That landscape's crafted for a very specific purpose, isn't it? Different probably to any of the other ones that we would have chosen for that episode, but because all of the rest were kind of to be cinematic largely, weren't they?
Exactly,
or to give a sense of scale. Whereas this is like, the world is a puzzle to some degree, and that's why we've had to construct it this way.
Yeah, for sure. How about yourself? What are you trucking in?
I'm trucking in a game. So this is a weird one because it's a game I didn't get to play as an answer to your question about the games we were excited about but never got a chance to have a go on. And this was Age of Conan, and it's the Conan the Barbarian MMO that came out in 2008. Go on.
Yeah, I have memories of being in your halls, being in your house at uni, watching you install that game. But you never got it working?
That's funny that you were there. You were there to witness the horror of it.
Yeah,
it was. You reminded me of it with your like Tony Hawk story and your own Total War story. That kind of just huge disappointment because like Jack and Justin were playing it. They were, they were having a go on this game. They got it and installed it, and it worked fine. And I went out and paid full price for it. And
like a 20-hour download, it was massive,
it went
right?
On, yeah. During that period of time where games were too big for the discs they came on, but the internet wasn't good enough to let you get the rest of the download. So you'd have to leave it on for like a day and a half. Yeah, exactly that. I mean, that period of time went on for years, didn't it? But 2008 was probably the peak. Because got it all installed, just absolutely wouldn't work. Was, at that point, very tech savvy. So did a lot of tinkering and tweaking and sorting out, graphics changing, just never got it to work. And to have your friends be like, oh, this game's so brilliant, we're having so much fun. But also, the three of us play a lot of games together, but I'm the bridge between their play styles a lot of the time. So like Justin is quite like to the point, this is how we beat it, find out the best, most optimized character, find out the best way of doing things, I'll get it, beat the challenge of it. And Jack is like, have a look at the scenery, maybe sort of slightly role play his character a little bit, take it all in a little bit more. And I'm somewhere in the middle of that. So I think as a three, we work, but the two of them didn't play it for that long. So I just assumed, as I always do if I'm not around, things fell apart without me.
Yeah, one sprinting ahead, the other looking for the puzzle hidden in the... Yeah.
Let's investigate this little town.
Yeah.
No, the objective is in that forest there. So move on. It's funny that you were there when I was installing it.
Yeah, I have really. Yeah,
You witnessed that happening.
I didn't know that you never got it working.
No, and
That's
again,
killer.
a game now that doesn't exist. I could never. Not that I wanted to play it at the time because of what was going on, but I don't think anyone ever can now. So,
Well, let's fire the fire the Viking funeral cannon for that. They don't have cannons. I don't know what that is. Yeah, maybe we do need a sound effect for that like is used in mourning. Like,
yeah.
lest we
But
remember.
you
lest we
don't want
forget.
something as like trite or overused as like a funeral march, though, do you?
Yeah,
You kind of want some strings or something, maybe.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll workshop it, and I'll find something.
Right, let's stop right now and find some strings. Today we remember Age of Conan.
Okay, so that moves us on to our final segment, which is Other People Exist Too, where we try and dig into the email inbox and look at what people have sent us. So it's been lovely getting your emails in. The first one we got was from Panswago Suarez in Pirate Cove, who just said, "You guys suck."
Panswago, you villain.
Panswago! But the others were much nicer, although almost all of the audio clips that we got instantly reference that what we're doing by recording a podcast is very self-indulgent and vaguely disgusting, which I think we can all agree with. But as well as that, it triggered a bunch of visceral memories for everyone, so that's much nicer. I think this is captured perfectly by a clip sent in by Russell, which I'll play out now.
I've already mentioned this, Nathan. I find the whole concept of doing something like this very self-important and I guess awful, but also there's lots of things that are awful. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
There was definitely a sense of, who do you guys think you are? Banging on about stuff for ages. I don't want to hear about that. Now, listen to me bang on about stuff for ages.
Which, we've built a whole podcast around. So
Absolutely.
More the merrier. If
we
you
were
do
already banging on about stuff, weren't we, all the time?
Yeah.
And now we've just started recording it. That's all that's happened.
Yeah, exactly. And would encourage you to do the same. So please send your things in.
Yeah, they're not anything that directly competes with what we're doing.
One of the questions that got sent in, we're going to try and use to launch the next series. So we'll circle back to that in a moment. But there was another great answer, which was actually a response to our question, Joe's question about nostalgia. And Jack sent in a layered answer about Final Fantasy VII, talking about all of the elements that led him to absolutely love that game. The one that I wanted to try and focus in on in this sort of segment was his final point around worldview. So I'll play out the clip in a second, and then we can try and come back and respond to it.
Worldview, it's a bad title, but what I mean by it is when you experience a work of art, some kind of cultural work that just resonates with you because you realise that somebody else has thought about the things that you think, and they've written it down, or they've composed something out of those feelings, and it makes you feel like you're not alone, right? Like, it makes you realise that there are other people out there fighting the same fight as you, or thinking the same thoughts as you. Final Fantasy VII is literally a game about fighting like mega corporations who are destroying the planet. You're kind of like an environmental protest group or violent protest group, and you're fighting, the people who live on the plane above. Look, quite literally, they live on a platform above the old city, and you are blowing up their factories and fighting back because they're destroying the planet that you all live on and you all share. It couldn't be more relevant today. And it's like listening to Bob Dylan or Nina Simone or reading How Green Was My Valley or something like that. You suddenly think, oh my God, someone else out there has thought these thoughts. Obviously, someone else out there has, but when you're a young teenager, you think, you might be alone and all of that frustration, and then you listen to Bob Dylan and he says something and you think, oh my God, yes, you've described something that I feel so beautifully and so much more succinctly than I ever could, and it just gives you kind of like a feeling of hope and that you're kind of in it together. Well, Final Fantasy VII does that. I remember this. You love the characters. I remember the storyline, and you immediately just understand it, and you agree with it. You want the planet to be saved. You want to fight back against the mega corporation that's ruining everything. It touches on wealth inequality and environmental destruction and climate change and terrorism. And it just resonates with young 13, 14-year-old Jack, and I'm sure many other people. So I'm nostalgic for that. I'm nostalgic for that feeling. I'm nostalgic for that first Bob Dylan track. I'm nostalgic for that first bit of socialist literature. And I'm nostalgic for that first Final Fantasy VII.
So yeah, there was so much there to relate to in Jack's message, and he obviously has such a passion for that game, which is really lovely. And I found it interesting thinking about, I think a kind of the gist of what he's getting at is what games might have impacted our worldview, or we felt reinforced our worldview, or something along those lines, which is actually something I struggled with quite a lot to come to. We talked about kind of taking the righteous path in games, but that's a path, right? That's us putting our worldview potentially on a game. That's not necessarily the other way around. And Jack kind of compared the way Final Fantasy made him feel to things like reading, literature and listening to Bob Dylan. They're all things I completely relate to, all things that have shaped my worldview. But in games, I found that harder. So I might hold mine back a minute, and I'd be interested to hear yours, and then I'll chip in with mine maybe at the end.
Yeah, I suppose the thing that jumped out to me straight away, and it was potentially because I was thinking about The Witness for the landscapes question, and then held it back. Was this and this is something I don't think I experienced in games when I was younger. It was playing The Witness, I guess, was in my early 30s, but I was playing it around the time that I was doing a bunch of meditating as well. And I'm someone who talks a lot about meditating whilst not practicing that much. But the thing that I hold on to from my time spent doing it is that really that there's really anything anywhere you look closely, and you can spend hours, days, months just focusing on the breath and getting more from that. The more time you spend doing it, the more you discover and find there. And that is absolutely brilliantly captured in The Witness. This idea that there's infinity all the way down, and yeah, I thought that really mirrored where I was at that point in my life as I was playing that game.
Oh, that's a really lovely answer, buddy. Mine is...
Yeah, compete with that.
I can't. Mine's garbage compared to that. There's a few. I mean, I'm still not going to talk about it, but you mentioned RimWorld to me as a game that's dominated my playtime over the last few years, and one that I really love. And the crux of that being this kind of storytelling, which is something I like to do and something that's kind of a part of who I am, maybe to some degree. But I suppose I ended up, I think maybe because it was about Final Fantasy VII, and Jack was thinking about something back quite far in his past, probably when he was, well, of course, he must have been a teenager, much less established as a human being, right? Much still coming to some of the way he felt about the world. Not that we're not doing that ourselves in different ways now, still in lots of ways. But so I thought back a little bit to games from when I was younger and a teenager and stuff like that. And a game that came to mind was The Sims, and very specifically about how the first Sims game, how it treated same-sex relationships. I think that was an interesting thing at the time. Like, we were teenagers in the late 90s, early 2000s, early 2000s, which a pretty toxic time generally in terms of, homophobic attitudes or just like being teenage boys. It was I dread to think what it was like for people coming out or not coming out in that period of time.
I think particularly as you like to your point in the culture as well. So if you look at representation in TV or film at the time, there were some breakthroughs, but very much in the margins rather than
absolutely. I think The Sims was the first place in sort of culture and entertainment, other than that EastEnders storyline that was very famous, where I had seen like a same-sex people kissing, like a same-sex kiss, if you see what I mean. I think I hadn't seen it anywhere else. And I think what it did to some degree was normalize that for me and make it so you have a sim and then, there's a boy he likes. So they have a kiss. Do you know what I mean? And then that's the thing. And I think probably it was in there then, you know what I mean? It was something that shaped my view sort of going forward. But it also reminded me of a story from that period of time where my nan was visiting. And I was sat playing The Sims, as I probably was every weekend. And I don't know if your like parents ever used to do this, but sometimes my parents didn't do it, but my like aunts and nans and stuff would, like, when you're sat playing a game, they're visiting, they would just sort of drift in the room and just watch over your shoulder for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then drift out again.
Yeah, just trying to show interest or something.
Yeah, that's it. But they might not even say anything. And I don't know, but I can't imagine they were genuinely interested in what they were seeing. I think that's part of why I struggle with it. But I also had one of my friend's mums would do it. You wouldn't even know she was there.
Yeah.
And you turn around and you've been playing like Roller Coaster Tycoon or something, while your friend was off getting some lunch, and you turn around and be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" But
Why is that kid in my house again? Yeah.
Why is he playing my son's computer?
Yeah.
But my nan would do that. I guess just to see me and to spend time with me. Sometimes she would chat, but she would come over sit over my shoulder and lean right in and look at what I was doing. And sometimes I'd explain what was going on. So I think I was like, "Oh, this is my Sims family. These two are like a gay couple, and look, they can kiss." And my nan just being like, "Oh my God, Nathan, do your mum and dad know you're playing this game?" And then kind of, not marching out the room, but I remember her telling my parents, who obviously didn't care, which again was maybe a window into the time. But yeah, that was not a great answer, but it was an interesting memory to recall, I think.
Yeah. No, I think you've aced that.
Oh, thank you.
Top marks.
And also in the new game, the new Sims 4, they're really like pioneering, it seems like, in terms of the relationship types, and you can be very, very specific in terms of how your Sims respond romantically or aromantically to their environment and other people around them, and the kinds of relationships they have, whether that be, with multiple people or individual people, and what they're open to. And it feels very forward thinking, I guess, sort of in the footsteps of the original Sims. Even though I looked it up quickly, gay couples couldn't get married in the original Sims, so that's the only mark against it. But yeah, I banged on for ages again. Loads more banging on, but yeah, that's
welcome
that's
back to the Banging On podcast. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if there was a tagline, that'd be it, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not really an emotional history of games. It's an emotional history of banging on.
You like to hear two friends banging on about things?
Yeah. Well, if you do, stay tuned for season 3, where, looking ahead, we'll be answering questions about the Proustian memories that we have of games, which obviously I would have needed to Google, except for it's included in the question in a very straightforward way.
Very helpfully.
Which is really, I think we're going to try and probably boil it down to, what are the memories that you have of places that are attached to games? And I've got loads.
Absolutely. It's been so lovely hearing people's gaming memories and hearing them talk about the podcast and tell us how they feel. So if you do have a gaming memory you want to share, or screenshots or videos or questions, or your answers to some of the questions we've already answered, please do send us an email at memorygamepod@gmail.com, or contact us on Instagram at memorygamepod.
Lovely. Great work. Keep on trucking.
Bye.
Yeah, that'll do. There'll be a postscript anyway, right there.
Yeah, of course I will, yeah.
Something weird.
So
So we thought it would be nice just to finish with a little more listener interaction, so we're going to include some thoughts from Russell, who you briefly heard earlier in this episode, stating, "There are lots of things that are awful. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it." So if we did have counter questions to listeners, I think mine would probably be, what are some of the other awful things we should be doing? So Russell sent in his answers to some of our questions from season 1 episodes. Here they are.
The one that is about what you stake your life on. I think I am genuinely not very good at computer games. I never get into any of them in real obsession levels. Maybe not even obsession, but I'm just never really that good at them. I don't think I've ever been like, I'm definitely the best at this amongst my friendship group or in any particular situation. If I had to give a shout at something, it might have been a different Winter Olympics game. It might have been the Lillehammer Winter Olympics, which again, on the basis that I don't think many people would have played it. I think it was an old Amiga game, and that I did play it quite a lot. My other kind of subversive answer to this one was actually again very similar to Rob's. One of his answers, not quite Guitar Hero, but I did for a while play Rock Band. I think it was Rock Band. So you had drums, guitars, and a microphone with a group of friends. I guess probably whilst on breaks at holiday from uni, back at home in Swindon, and I am very bad at singing. I can kind of, people who can sing have told me I can kind of sing, but in the wrong way, which I don't really understand. But if there's any kind of like trying to hit a note or something, I really don't get it, and I find that quite frustrating because I like singing, and it meant that I was never singing on this version of the game. I had a couple of friends who were actually very good singers, quite musical, but if ever I did sing, the one song I'd probably sing, or I did tried a few times, was "Misery Business" by Paramore, and with we always failed the song, and it was largely in part to the singing part, but it did start off with a very good like hit that snare. I'm in the bits of some misery. Let's take it from the start. She's got a body like an hourglass, is ticking like a clock. It's only a matter of time until you'll break through. That's pretty much as good as I was doing it then. So I think I'm all for it. Well, I know I'm all for this. But if I have to beat death, I think I can do a better singing impression of Hayley Williams from Paramore than death. And if I don't, if I am forced to sell my soul to the devil or whatever, at least seeing death incarnate, singing pitch perfect Hayley Williams Paramore, Misery Business would be a pretty fun way to go. Games that make me frustrated. I think there's a Formula 1 game which I was very frustrated at, mainly because I didn't like racing with the cheat lines on. And again, Rob's mentioned the Italian job level. That triggered a memory of racing around in the underground and going up some steps and then going through some sewers. I don't think I get that frustrated because I feel like I'm not that good, and I know I'm not that good. So I think I either, just give up, or I don't have that lofty expectations to start with. Again, I think that links into the addiction as well. There's definitely Football Manager games and recently Baldur's Gate 3, which I've stayed up late and I should, playing to detriment of my own probably physical and mental health. But we're talking like 3 a.m, nothing more than that. So I don't think I've ever would be addicted. The one thing that I think has maybe hooked into the more darker part of addiction, but on a very small level, is the newer FIFA games, where you kind of there'll be like weekend tournaments and you have to play 20 games, and however many you win leads to a certain thing, and you need to win a certain amount to qualify for it. And FIFA, when you get those games and you've got the ultimate team concept, it's very exciting to start with. You're very good, but you will inevitably have played this for a little while. You'll have a weekend where you realise you've just played these games and you haven't enjoyed a single one of them, and it isn't fun. And you might win, but you'll lose, and you'll be very frustrated at times and get very sad, and you kind of keep doing it for a while. And I think that's probably the way that the games have got better at getting you addicted, in the way that they're structured and formatted. I think that might be some more the online elements and the stuff which leads to people like not eating for days because they're playing a computer game, which feels like a serious and pretty sad time. But yes, as with the rest of my fairly privileged life, I don't think I've ever really got to that level of addiction for a computer game. When it comes to cars, Nath mentioned the Banshee. Hadn't thought about that in many years, but yeah, that is definitely one car that I do remember and being amazed with racing. I do like a lot of racing games, but no other cars really came to mind. Again, I think I don't really care about cars. I just like racing games. So I'd probably just play whatever car was available and upgrade it. I like some kind of one that sticks to the road well, maybe. But the talk with the Warthog and that did, one of my greatest gaming memories is one of the end of the cooperative missions. I think probably ended the whole campaign in one of the Halos. You have to drive a Warthog across a spaceship that is slowly falling apart. Well, no, quickly falling apart and exploding. And you have to follow a route, and it looks more like organic than it really is. It kind of guides you, but it's very dramatic. There's lots of explosions. You're driving in a Warthog, you're shooting at things. You're not really sure if they can hit you. But at university, we got back at maybe 1 a.m. Me and my friend Matt, we put Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell on and played it pretty much as loud as you could, and played this final level over and over again. Explosions, Bat Out of Hell as loud as you can, screaming, crashing a lot, getting closer and closer to finishing it while still being quite drunk. And then at one point, maybe about 1:45 a.m., our housemate came down and timidly knocked on the door, which of course we didn't hear, knocked a bit louder, and then kind of stuck her head around the and very politely asked us if we could maybe turn it down a little bit. At which point we remembered that there were other humans in the world, and that what we were doing must have been one of the most horrendous things, and very annoying. So I think we probably stopped playing there, but we were just so in our own enjoyment of this. I mean, it was just the perfect setting, that we completely forgot that it might be annoying to hear that at 1 a.m. Anyway, those are all my answers to the questions. I'm sure those are the ones that kind of came up as I was thinking through it. Yeah, and it's great to relive those memories and think of them and give some answers and relate them to the ideas that you had as well. And thoroughly interesting. Thank you very much.
Memory complete. Uploading memory.
Thanks for listening to The Memory Game. If you would like to share a gaming memory with us, ask us a question or send us your thoughts, you can contact us at memorygamepod@gmail.com or on Instagram @memorygamepod.